So I volunteered to give a talk at the Truth group that I used to attend. I haven't been for a long time, but once when I went to check a fuel saving system, which was only last week, and the system I think wasn't particularly good, but I purchased it anyway and probably wasted my money, but it's not important. But I will be given probably a 10-minute slot in a week's time, and I said that I would speak about the carnivore diet, and my initial idea was just to report my own experience. So I'm preparing for that talk mentally, and I guess just in terms of references and the sorts of questions that are likely to appear. There was an older married couple, well, probably younger than me, but seemed older at the time, several years ago when I first attended. And they were kind of straight people, and I mean straight in the way that we used to say it in the 1970s. It just means not switched on kind of thing. They were straight people, and the gentleman spoke, and he was there with his wife, and he recommended the carnivore diet. He explained about it. He'd written a book that was helping them. He explained many of the things that I now know. And they got a lot of pushback from the vegans. There's a lot of vegans and vegetarians in the truth movement. And he was facing some quite vocal resistance. So I'll have to be prepared for that, because there will be vegans and vegetarians listening, and they'll have their point of view, I'm sure. So I need to establish the grounds that make it acceptable to raise animals to be killed and eaten. And of course, I'm going to look in the Bible to find them. And the key thing is to identify the nature of animals. What are they? And consciousness comes into it. The Bible would claim that an animal is a dumb beast and has no understanding. And it likens people to animals at a certain point, having no understanding, in Psalm 49. And having no understanding in the case of animals, I think this is a question of consciousness. An animal isn't self-aware. They move on different planes, as it were. They respond instinctively in their lives. If they were conscious and self-aware, then killing them would become more problematic, of course. But, we have to eat. And so some animals are going to be killed that we may eat, whether they're raised for slaughter or whether they're killed deliberately or coincidentally by these massive arable farms and crops, which completely destroy the ecosystem in the countryside and end up with the death of a great deal of wildlife. That you may have your bread and cereals and sweet corn and all the rest of it, and lettuces. They're produced in such large quantities thanks to the death of animals which would otherwise eat them. So you can't escape that. So there's quite a few interesting areas to attack this from. Now, the other thing that concerns me, or that I need to think carefully about, is whether to speak about my YouTube channel. I don't want people to watch it, actually. I don't want to have more views or more subscribers. I'm very happy with the subscribers that I've got, and if you're listening, I'm very glad to have you here, and I'm honoured that you would find what I say useful at sometimes when you can hear it. But some of the things that I've revealed, of course, I've spoken about a witch, and some people in the truth movement might think that they know who I'm speaking about, but they probably don't actually. I've never, of course, revealed any names. And there are many witches in the truth movement. But you know how it is, people that you know might think that I'm speaking about some known real person. And the things that I say really are applicable very widely, I think. I certainly don't want to criticize any individual. I think that would be quite wrong. I'm mainly addressing philosophical positions. That's the focus of my thought process. I mean, we're all condemned, I mean, if I'm going to start criticizing, I've got plenty of mirrors in the house. I don't need to have any external people to criticize, But it might be honourable to reveal the fact that I do have a YouTube channel, and that the Very Truth movement has been, one video that I did recently got over 1,000 views, and I was mainly ranting about truthers and their conceits. I am critical, as I was critical in the church, and I spoke in the church also. Ultimately, I mean, it's not about condemning and judging people. I mean, we're all in this together. I'm just trying to work out the truth, to work out the philosophical underpinnings for our different positions. I think that's quite important. When you've got sheep grazing in the fields and cows grazing in the fields, and perhaps the sheep would graze more towards the hillsides where the grass is a little bit shorter, and the cows would be happier in the valley with the long grass. They don't really create much in the way of pollution. Their dung fertilizes the ground. They don't smell particularly. It's not like pigs in Italy, in the north of Italy. They had huge pig farms, and those places stink, and they pollute the rivers also. They have a problem with the runoff, the percolate that comes from pig farms, and it gets into the rivers and it creates all sorts of problems. And you could say the same also, I suppose, about chickens when they're kept in those battery farms. Those places stink if you go anywhere near them. So you can tell that there's something not quite right. I think there's nothing wrong with eating pork, but I prefer the English system where we see pigs in the fields and less intensively farmed. Intensive farming of pigs, maybe intensive farming of any animal, is not really a good practice for the quality of the food and for the life of the animal. I mean, we are compassionate. We don't want to be cruel in our practices, of course not. So that does seem to suggest, again, that our primary sources of food are mutton and lamb and beef. These are the things which feed us, and they also seem to have a good effect on the countryside also, to have these animals around. So I've got this talk coming up, and I've got to try and deliver a clear message. And, I'll have to be careful, because I'm also speaking to people who are, not all of them, but I would say a lot of them are very much opposed to the Bible. And I base my conclusions on biblical truth. I search the scriptures and see if I can find if I'm talking nonsense or not. And I've done this with the carnivore diet, and I'm pretty satisfied with what I found. Um, and there I have many verses that I can bring to the table, but I'm fighting against skepticism, of course. I don't think I'm trying to convince anybody of anything anyway. I'll just relate my own experience and leave it at that. But it's an interesting opportunity, and Lord knows where it will go, or whether I will be able to speak clearly and audibly. Those things are perhaps the most important things to concentrate on, rather than some of the intricate details. Language is such an important aspect of all this, and the words that I use will have to be chosen carefully, and my demeanour will have to be proper, and my diction will have to be clear. So I've got all those challenges coming up, and I'll let you know how it goes. I'll probably talk again before then, but I wanted to do a preparatory talk. I might even do the entire talk and record it before I give it. That would be quite an organized way of doing it, I suppose. God bless this morning.